It's great to have you with us. We are going to go ahead and get started. I know there are still quite a few people that are joining us. And so welcome to everyone. We are recording this and we'll make it available if folks want to go back and listen to it again later. I'm Michelle Abraham, and I am the State Director for the South Carolina Small Business Development Centers. We are so pleased to be able to present this webinar to you today. As you all know, we continue to work with the Congress and our SBA partners and others in trying to provide relief to the many small businesses that have been impacted through the course of the last 14 months or so in the pandemic. So this latest program that is just about to be launched is called the Restaurant Revitalization Act. It is part of the American Rescue legislation that was put into place under President Biden. And we are very fortunate today to have some folks with the SBA with us to talk through the actual requirements for eligibility and how you go about applying, what kinds of things you need to be able to prepare and do as you're putting your application together. The small business development centers are kind of boots on the ground, if you will, for the SBA. And we have been assisting clients hands-on with all of the different programs that have come out since COVID-19 started. So the PPP loans, the EIDL program, the shuttered venues, and now the Restaurant Revitalization Program. Just know that there are over 50 of us located throughout South Carolina. We are here to assist you through this process. And so as you learn what you do today, as you have more questions or want some help with preparing the documentation that you will need for these applications or have questions about it, feel free to reach out to us. Our website is www.SC, like South Carolina, SBDC for Small Business Development Center, SBDC.com. And if you go to that, you will see a tab at the top for locations and how to reach out to us directly. So with that, again, welcome. We're happy to have you here. And it's my pleasure to introduce Greg White, who is the District Director for the South Carolina Small Business Administration Office. So Greg, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Michelle. It's a pleasure to be here, and just want to thank you for your participation with all of our SBA disaster relief, COVID relief bill, then loans and grants that we've put forth over the period of years. Without your help, we would not be able to serve the over 100,000 applications that we've had in. So thank you very much. With me today, we have William Furman, who will go through a presentation about our Restaurant Revitalization Fund, and Angela Boer, who will be answering questions in the chat box. And also at the end of the presentation, she'll be going through a sample application so that if you have any questions about the application itself, you can go through that process. Congress in their relief bill allocated $28.8 billion for this fund. They opened it up for applications, allowed us to open up on applications starting, actually just for the portal to be open this Friday on April the 30th. On Monday, applications will be opened May the 3rd. On that first application, there'll be some priorities for women, veterans, small disadvantaged businesses, and economic disadvantaged businesses will be able to apply at that point. Each business will have a maximum of $10 million with $5 million per locations. And then one of the caveats is that you have to use the funds by March 11th, 2023. There are some set-asides for gross revenues in 2019. 5 billion was set aside for gross revenues of 500,000 and less. 4 billion was set aside for gross revenues of 1.5 million or less, and 500 million was set aside for gross revenues of 50,000 and less. So make sure that you look at if your priority application, go ahead and get your application in as soon as possible. You can go ahead and start application process this Friday once the portal opens up. William and Angela go into much more detail in the application process. SBA has 3 offices. We have one in Spartanburg, one in Columbia, and one in Charleston that's there to serve you. But again, with SBDC here supporting us, they have the resources also to support you in what's needed to do and get this application complete. We know there's a need for the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, so please take advantage of it. And with that, I'll turn it over to William. Unmute, William. William, you need to unmute again.
Yeah,
Okay.
seems like we would get used to this at some point, right? Yeah, but thank you, Greg, and thank you, Michelle. Really appreciate everything that the SBDC does. You guys are really the boots on the ground for small businesses, and definitely make our job much easier by having you here with us. So, you know, we're going to go through the slide presentation, and it gives a pretty nice overview of all the rules and the eligibility requirements. But I would highly encourage you, in these links, and I think we'll be posting these in the chat as well. But I would encourage you to go to the website, and there's some documents there. There's a sample application there. There is a program guide that really has most all the rules. And then something else that is there that I found most helpful for me in trying to get my arms wrapped around all of this is a knowledge base, which includes frequently asked questions. And so, you know, if you have the question, many times somebody has already asked that question, and it has been addressed directly by SBA. So all of that information is right there on our website. But let's go ahead and get started. And so, you know, how did we get here, and what is it? So this is part of the American Rescue Plan Act. This was passed on March 11th, and this is what established the RRF, or Restaurant Revitalization Fund. As Greg, I think, mentioned, it did appropriate about $28.6 billion for the RRF. But the thing you need to keep in mind is that while that is a huge dollar number, the demand for this is even greater. So you need to go ahead and be prepared as quickly as you can. Greg mentioned that the portal will open Friday. You can go ahead and create your login there on Friday, and then be prepared for noon on Monday when the portal will actually open, and you'll be able to enter your application. So, you know, you do maybe have some work to do, or just make sure you understand and start pulling all your documents together right now. There is no deadline for the application. What is going to govern that is just the appropriations that remain available. So, you know, I think everybody expects that this will go pretty quickly. So again, it is important to get your application in, and those funds, once they are used, then that is going to end the application process. Congress may, or they may not, appropriate more money. You know, nobody, my crystal ball is not really working real well today, so I can't guess what Congress might or might not do. So that, again, just get your application in as quickly as you can. And then once you receive your funds, they do have to be used by March 11th of 2023. So that gives you good flexibility. Basically, we're looking at about 2 years that you have to be able to use those funds. So who is eligible? Eligible entities or businesses that are not permanently closed, and include businesses where the public or patrons assemble for the primary purpose of being served food and drink. So there are a couple of good points here. You know, many businesses did close temporarily. Some of them have opened back up. Some have not, but they still intend to reopen. They were forced to close due to the pandemic. So they are eligible. And the other key here is that the business has to have the primary purpose of serving food and drink, of which at least 33% of that has to be on site. So if you look at this list of eligible entities, if they do not have an asterisk, they are presumed to have greater than 33% on-site 2019 food and beverage sales. Okay, so those are presumed to meet that requirement. If they do not have the asterisk, let's say, I'm sorry, if they do have the asterisk, you're going to have to provide documentation that you meet that 33% of on-site gross receipts. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through the presentation. So who is ineligible? The following would be ineligible. So if you're a local government, you're not eligible. As of March 13th, 2020, if you own or operate together with any affiliated businesses more than 20 locations, and this is regardless of whether those locations do business under the same name or different names or in different industries, that would not be eligible. If you have a pending application or if you have received a shuttered venue operators grant, you cannot get the RRF 2. You can only have one or the other. Publicly traded companies are not eligible. If the business is permanently closed, you are not eligible. Is a nonprofit organization is not eligible. And then the minimum funding level for this is $1,000. So if once you go through the calculations, if your potential RF fund is less than $1,000, then you're not going to be eligible either. Okay, how much am I eligible for? The maximum is up to $5 million per location, not to exceed 10 million total for the applicant and any affiliated businesses. So 5 million for the location, grand total of 10 million. Again, we mentioned the minimum is 1,000. You have to have at least $1,000 in calculations to be eligible. So how is this program different from other SBA programs? Well, there's some good things here. The applicants do not have to be registered in sam.gov, and SBA will not require a DUNS or CAGE identifier. And if you don't know what that is, that's okay. You just know that you don't have to worry about it. It's not required. And then you do have to have a valid, unexpired I-10s. If you have a valid I-10s, then you are acceptable. There are a couple of live links here in this presentation. I think we'll probably be sharing that. I know that this is being recorded. And so that gives you some additional information if you would like to follow up on the individual tax identification numbers and I-10 expiration questions. All right, the forms of organization and who is eligible, and pretty well they are all covered. C Corps, S Corps, partnerships, LLC, sole proprietorships, self-employed individuals, independent contractors, tribal businesses, LLCs taxed as S corporations or sole proprietors. Okay, so they're all eligible. If we have any B corporations, they are eligible, but they will need to select either C Corp or S Corp on their application, depending on how they are taxed. And you can also refer to your tax return to see if you're self-employed versus sole proprietor on that. All right, franchises. This is a good one to make sure that you understand too. Any business concern operating as a franchise and meeting all other program requirements is eligible. The franchise must be listed on the SBA Franchise Directory. So SBA has what we call this franchise directory, and it is a list of all eligible franchises that, normally we use this list for our loan programs, but it is being applied to the RRF as well. And so what I would encourage you to do this app in the application portal, you're going to be able to look it up and look to see if it's in the franchise directory. But I would not wait. I mean, every day counts. So you can go on to sba.gov, or you can actually just Google Sba Franchise Directory, and it will pull that directory up, and you can take a look to see if your franchise has been reviewed and approved by SBA. Okay, so if you don't see it on the directory, you can, basically what you will need to do is you'll need to submit your franchise disclosure documents and any other agreements that you have for your franchise, and submit that to franchise@sba.gov for review to make sure it meets SBA's eligibility criteria. So that is an important one, and that is something that you can do today to make sure that your franchise is eligible. Another one we've gotten a lot of questions on, especially when when we look at PPP, is bankruptcy. And there are various rules now for this, so don't get that confused. Don't confuse PPP with RRF. So applicants that are operating under approved plan for reorganization, and that's whether it's a Chapter 11 or 12 or 13, and if you meet all the other requirements, are eligible for funding. If the business is closed, if it's a Chapter 7 liquidation, and if it's in bankruptcy without an approved plan of reorganization, then it is not going to be eligible. You have to have an approved plan in place for reorganization to be eligible. And again, permanently closed doesn't mean that those businesses who temporarily close their doors due to restrictions or other issues, it doesn't mean that they're not eligible. Okay, so if it's not permanently closed, you would be eligible for the RRF. So how do other SBA relief programs impact RRF? So most all businesses at this point have received, whether it be an EIDL loan or a PPP loan. And so this is what is going to happen with these situations. If you've already received funds through the PPP program, they will be subtracted from the applicant's final RRF funding. Okay, so the applicant is verified using their EIN, the ITIN, or Social Security number associated with its PPP loan. So the PPP loan will be deducted. If an applicant received a PPP loan, the applicant must use the same EIN for its RRF application as it used in the PPP application. So you need to use the same format, when you're looking at your tax ID numbers, and however you applied for your PPP is how you need to apply for RRF. So take it one step further. If an applicant applied for a first draw PPP for multiple locations under one EIDN, and then subsequently applied for a second draw PPP loan under different EINs, then you must apply or must provide the EINs for each entity that received the second draw loan. So SBA's just got to track that and tie that PPP loan that you received to your RRF so that it can be deducted. Upon applying for RRF, applicant must withdraw any outstanding PPP application. Okay, so if you have an application out there that's being held up, and I know we still have applications being held up with with hold codes and error codes, but once you apply for the RF, you have to withdraw that. You would have to go and request that your lender withdraw that. The applicant must not have a pending application for or have received shuttered venue operator grant from SBA. Remember, you can only have one. It's either or. You can either have an RF or a shuttered venue operator grant. You cannot have both. All right, other attestations by the applicant, and this applies, this really applied to PPP as well, but all applicants must certify that current economic uncertainty makes the funding request necessary to support the ongoing or anticipated operations of the business. So that's pretty straightforward. What are some of the eligible uses of funds? Okay, so they fall in three categories: business expenses, construction expenses, and business debt. And a couple of key things to know here is that these funds cannot be used for expansion of the business. Okay, so that is not the intent of the program, but it can be used to pay for your normal business payroll costs, utility payments, maintenance expenses, business supplies, and that would include PPE or cleaning materials, food and beverage expenses, covered supplier costs, business operating expenses. It could include, what if your HVAC system went down, and you had a major repair, it could be used for that. That would be considered a business expense. Another example that I was told would be, and this is kind of interesting, is in the food truck realm, you are not allowed to buy a new food truck. The answer is no. However, if your food truck was involved in an accident and your food truck was a total loss, then yes, you could use the RF funds for replacement of that food truck. Okay, so those are some of the, it starts to get a little bit gray when you get there, but that is eligible. Now, construction expenses. Expansion costs, again, are not ineligible. However, construction of outdoor seating is an authorized expense. And that's really the only thing, if you look at expansion or construction, that is the only time it is eligible, is for construction of outdoor seating. And then business debt, it is eligible. Payments on, any business mortgage obligation, both principal and interest. But it cannot be used to prepay, it cannot be used to pay ahead, it cannot be used to pay off. It would have to be your normal principal and interest payments. And business debt service, again, principal and interest, does not include any prepayment of principal and or interest. Now, one of the questions was credit cards. Can it be used for credit card debt? And credit card debt is not an amortized debt. So, if you have credit card debt, that would be allowed. Okay, so when do I have to use the funds? The funds must be spent on expenses that were incurred between February 20th or February 15th of 2020 and March 11th of 2023. And so the same thing, if you're going back to that credit card debt, that debt would have to had been incurred during that time period. If the business permanently closes after receiving funds, the covered period will end, and the business will permanently closes on March 11th, 2023, whichever occurs sooner. Any funds not spent on eligible expenses by the time the covered period ends must be returned to the government. Okay, so if you close, any of those funds do have to be returned. And if you don't spend it by March 11th of 2023, those would have to be returned. And so it does have reporting requirements. You have a use of funds assessment. After the total award funds have been exhausted, entities must provide a detailed expenditure report and certification for the required period. Until the applicant completes the use of funds assessment, beginning December 2021, applicants are required to provide self-reported, unaudited data detailing the use of distributed funds each year through 2023. And SBA will provide additional guidance that outlines the detailed reporting requirements and procedures in coming weeks. Now, just a helpful hint, maybe a good practice, when you're tracking these funds, you very well may want to put them in a dedicated business account. And then that will make it a little bit easier for you to be able to track the use of these funds and meet these reporting guidelines.
William, can I ask you a question? There's a question in the chat that I have not heard this question before.
Okay.
Someone asked the question, can they use it to pay for the idle loan? Greg, have you heard anything on that? Because I have not.
Yeah, so I'll address that. They can use it to make their normal principal and interest payments on the idle loan. So the answer is yes, but it cannot be used to prepay the idle loan. It cannot be used to pay that idle loan off. Right now, all idle loan payments are still under deferment. And so until that loan goes into repayment status, that the RRF fund would not be able to be used to apply that. Now, once that deferment ends and they have regular scheduled principal and interest payments and they still have RRF funds available, yes, it could be used for that. Okay, now we're getting to the fun part. We're getting to the calculations. And some of them are simple and some of them are maybe not. And so there are 3 different methods, depending on your circumstances, that you will use to calculate your potential fund amount. So the first is calculation 1, and these are the applicants in operation prior to or on January 1 of 2020. And I've seen another question, what does in operation mean? And so what that means is that is when you actually had revenue. That was when you had revenue coming in. So, maybe you started your business 1 year and you were in planning stages and you got your legal organizational documents in place, but you didn't start operation until you started to generate revenue. And so in calculation 1, we use January 1 applicants in operation prior to or on January 1 of 2019. And we're going to use your 2019 gross receipts minus 2020 gross receipts minus any PPP loan amounts. And that is going to give you your potential RRF fund amount. So that's really straightforward. Calculation 2, applicants that began operations partially through 2019. Okay, so what you're going to do on this one is you're going to take the average 2019 monthly gross receipts times 12 minus your 2020 gross receipts minus your PPP loan amounts. So let's talk about that one for just a little bit more, maybe give an example. Let's say you started in, you started in November. You started in November of 2019, November 1, and so you had 2 months of gross receipts. So what you're going to do is you're going to get that, you're going to take the average, or you're going to total that and divide it by 2 to get it on a monthly basis, and then multiply it by 12 to annualize that. Okay, so if you had $20,000 and you were in business 2 months in 2019, that gives you $10,000 per month. You're going to annualize it, so multiply it by 12, and you would have $120,000 in gross receipts. And then you're going to minus the 2020 gross receipts minus your PPP loan amount. Okay, so a little bit more complex, but not too bad. Applicants that began operations partially in 2019 may choose to use calculation 2 or calculation 3. Okay, so however, calculation 3 could require longer processing time. All right, so let's take a look at calculation 3. All right, this would be for applicants that began operations on or between January 1 of 2020 and March 10th of 2021, and applicants not yet opened but have incurred eligible expenses as of March 11th of 2021. Okay, so on this, you've got to take the total amount spent on eligible expenses between February 15th and March 11th of 2021, and then you're going to subtract 2020 and 2021 gross receipts minus any PPP loan amounts. Okay, so that's how you're going to arrive under this situation. Applicants that began operations partially in 2019, again, you may choose to use calculation 2 or 3, so you can determine which one works in your favor. But knowing that the calculation number 3 could require a longer processing time. All right, what's excluded from gross receipts? This is important. Paycheck Protection Program loans, first and second draw, they are all excluded. If you have existing SBA loans and SBA made loan payments for you, those are called Section 1112 payments. They are not included. Any idle loan or idle advance or targeted advance or any other grant funds received via the CARE Act are not included. If you got any state or local business grants, you know, there were some of those that were made available. Those are not included in your gross receipts. And then the Randolph-Shepard Act financial relief and restoration payments, they are not included in your gross receipts. So do not include any of that. And then now we get to the point of how do I apply? And so there are 3 different ways that you can apply. You can apply directly through the SBA platform. And we're fortunate to have Angela Brewer with us today. She does have access to the platform, and she's going to be able to show us what that looks like and maybe show us how that works. So that's a real benefit for us today.
William, before you go any further, there are several questions well, a couple of questions came up in the chat, and they're still talking about what's considered debt. They want to know if they have a pending loan that's in default right now. I don't know if you can hear me well or not. Can they use the RRF to pay pending loans that's in default? That is, let's say, would it be considered prepaying a debt if the debtor is required to pay the debt in full because of default on original loan payments?
You know, and that would be one that I have not seen where it is addressed. You can bring the loan current. That I know is acceptable. That would be one that you would probably want to make a call into the call center. And I don't know that policy has been established. Greg, I don't know if you want to chime in on that, but I have not seen, you know, if the loan, I could see it both ways. If the loan's being accelerated, the lender has made full demand for payment, you know, that could be a situation that may work.
William, I haven't seen anything on that at this time. I would encourage whoever asked the question to continue to check in the FAQs. We can send that up as far as a question to the center also, but we'll try to check in that and get back to you, or either just keep checking the FAQs on the website for additional information.
Yeah, and there's one thing that I have not mentioned, and I think it may be on a slide a little bit later, but the SBA has set up a call center. And that number is 844-279-8898. And as I look at this slide, this is the same telephone number that you can use to make your application. But this call center is set up that they will help with questions like that as well. It has been staffed with 150 trained SBA staff members, and it is open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, as I understand. So that could be a good way to check on that as well. So that's a great resource. And basically we've been instructed to direct you know, questions to that call number and to those individuals. Angela, we have anything else?
Everything else I've been answering in the chat is just that particular one, because I haven't heard anything on that.
Okay, good. So there are 3 ways to apply. So you can apply directly through the SBA portal. That's restaurants.sba.gov. And that is, you will be able to go on Friday morning at 9 a.m., I believe, and you can start your registration process. And then it will go live at noon on Monday to process or accept applications. And so that's, probably going to be your primary source. However, point of sale vendors are also involved, and SBA is looking actively to partner with more POS providers. But I do know Square, Toast, Aloha, and Clover are all participating. I would expect some more will jump on here soon as well. So that's an option. And then finally, as I mentioned, you can make a call through the through this telephone number, and telephonic applications will have a longer processing time. I would make that my absolute last choice. I mean, if you can get, I don't know honestly, I don't know anywhere in South Carolina that you couldn't drive an hour and find a computer. You can go to a public library, you can go to an educational institution, and there are computers that are available. Even the Small Business Development Center and even SCORE, they could be options for you as well. So I would highly discourage the use of trying to apply through the telephone. I fear it would just add too much time to the processing, and you very well may miss out. All right, so what documents do you need in order to apply? You've got to have your application. There is a sample application on the SBA website. And keep in mind, if you're going through the portal, you will not use a paper application, so it's embedded in that system. But just for if you were doing it via paper, there's a form. It would have to be initialed and signed, and that is done on the grant platform. Again, that form is in the platform. Verification of tax information, that's the IRS form 4506T. Completion of this form digitally on the SBA grant platform will satisfy this as well. And then you have to have your gross receipts documentation. All right, any of the following documents demonstrating gross receipts, if applicable, eligible expenses. Business tax returns, that is going to be the gold standard, okay? If you can provide your tax returns, that is the best. You can use bank statements, externally or internally prepared financial statements such as income statements or profit and loss statements are acceptable. Again, it may delay your processing, but they are acceptable. And then point of sale reports, including IRS Form 1099K, are acceptable as well. Okay, for calculations 1 and 2, these would be the calculations, just as a reminder, these are the calculations that if you were in business in the full year of 2019, or if you were in business part of 2019, this is what you would have to have. You're going to have your application. You're going to have your tax verification. You're going to have your 2019 gross receipts in tax returns. You've got to have 3 months of bank statements, and those are going to be your 3 most recent months of bank statements. You've got to have 2020 gross receipts. Now, the preferred method, again, the gold standard, is if you filed your federal tax returns for 2020 and or your point of sales report. Now, if you haven't done that, these are accepted, but again, it may make a delay in your application. And these would be your externally or internally prepared financial statements, such as income statements or profit and loss statements, signed, dated, and certified as to the accuracy by the applicant. So that's for calculation 1 and 2. All right, calculation 3. For calculation 3, you would, again, you're going to be required to have your application, your tax verification, 3 most recent months of bank statements, and your 20 and 21 gross receipts. Now, the preferred method, again, gold standard, is 2020 federal tax return, 2020 point of sales reports, and 2021 point of sales reports. Okay, and that would be on 2020. That would be whether they are filed or whether they are prepared but not yet filed. And then eligible expense documentation, you've got to have at least one, and required appropriate supporting documentation for specific eligible expense type. So this is going to be the preferred method, is to have a Cpa Comfort Letter with an accompanying profit and loss and balance sheet documentation. This is what's going to provide the fastest SBA review. Now, what is a Cpa Comfort Letter? And basically that is a letter from your CPA verifying that those financial documents are correct and accurate. If you can get that from a CPA, that is going to help expedite your application. Now, accepted but maybe delayed would be just your externally or internally prepared financial statements, such as income statements or profit and loss statements, signed, dated, and certified as to the accuracy by the applicant. And then eligible expense documentation, which would be invoices, payroll documents, anything else that you have to document those types of expenses. Okay, in addition to the documents on the prior slide, for applicants that are a brew pub, tasting room, tap room, brewery, winery, distillery, or bakery, we will need documents evidencing that on-site sales to the public comprise at least 33% of gross receipts for 2019. And they may include tax and trade bureau forms, state and local forms filed or internally created reports from inventory management, sales reporting, or accounting software. For businesses that opened in 2020, the applicant's original business model should have contemplated at least 33% gross receipts in on-site sales to the public. And so what we're talking about there is a business plan in that situation. For applicants that are in documents evidencing that on-site sales of food and beverage to the public comprise at least 33% of gross receipts in 2019. For businesses that are open in 2020, the applicant's original business model should have contemplated at least 33% of gross receipts in on-site sales for food and beverage to the public. Okay, so you've got to have documentation showing that that was your intent. How do I get help applying? Again, if you have questions, the best thing to do is to call the center hotline. That's 844-279-8898. You can contact your local SBA district office. We're here to help you as well. Here's a live link. You can pull that up, get you all the contact information there. And there is help available in multiple languages. If you go to the SBA webpage, you can see, you'll be able to see that there. So all of that is there on our webpage. I will say that webpage is continuously being updated. Frequently asked questions are continually being added as well. Now, some of the best practices provide complete documentation. So applications with incomplete documentation will be rejected. And guess what? You get to go back to the back of the line. So make sure that everything is complete and accurate. Leverage your resources. While it's not required, CPAs are a good resource. Other accounting professionals, they can help ensure that you have a complete and well-documented application. If you have corrections, SBA is not able to make corrections on behalf of the applicant. Applicants who require corrections will need to contact the call center hotline again. And again, that's going to slow your application down. And then applicants who still intend to apply for PPP, RRF applicants are advised to complete their PPP application in advance of the RRF application. And when it says complete the application, that means that your PPP would be funded because SBA has to account for that. You know, you cannot have that PPP is going to have to be deducted from your RRF application. All right, so I want to briefly talk about the pilot period. Basically, the pilot period has been completed, but SBA was doing its due diligence to make sure that this portal worked, okay? And so what they did is they got some participants at random and they tried to break the system. All right, that's in effect what they did. They got them to input information, tried to make sure that it worked. If there were any issues, it needed to be corrected then. None of those applicants or participants have received any money, and they will not receive any money until RRF is open to the public, okay? So if you haven't been selected for a pilot period, you're not going to be selected, okay? So don't worry about that. At this point, the thing you need to worry about is the priority period. And these would be days 1 through 21. And so day 1, unless something changes, and things tend to change around here recently, but right now we're looking at Monday at noon for the portal to start. And so the priority period is going to be the first 3 weeks, 1 through 21. And during that initial 21-day period, SBA will accept applications from all applicants, okay? So everybody can apply during the priority period. However, only applications from small businesses owned by women, veterans, and socially and economically disadvantaged applicants will be funded during this period, okay? So my advice to you, I don't care who you are, I don't care whether you're, you fall into a priority group or not, you need to be submitting your application on Monday. I would definitely have my ducks in a row and be getting in line. All right. Now, if you're not in the priority group, that's okay. Your application will be there. You will be in line. And then on day 2022, those applications will be funded. And that will go on until all the funds are exhausted. All right, so who are the priority groups and what does it take to qualify? So it is a small business concern that is at least 51% owned and the management and daily operations of the applicant are controlled. And I'm gonna read that one more time. 51% owned and the management and daily business operations of the applicant are controlled by one or more individuals who are women, veterans, socially and economically disadvantaged, okay? So not only is it owned, but the business has to be controlled by this group, by 51% of this group. So the applicants must self-certify on the application that they meet the eligibility requirements. Here's an example, an applicant has 5 owners, who each own 20% of the applicant. 2 owners are veterans, so that's 40%. And 1 owner is socially and economically disadvantaged, that would be 60%. SBA would consider this applicant to meet the requirement that at least 51% of the applicant is owned by a priority group. All right, so what does socially disadvantaged individuals mean? And so those are individuals who have been subjected to racial or ethnic prejudice or cultural bias because of their identity as a member of a group without regard to their individual qualities. Individuals who are members of the following groups are presumed to be socially disadvantaged, and that would be Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, Native Americans, and this includes Alaska Natives and Native Hawaiians, Asian Pacific Americans, or subcontinent Asian Americans. And then economically disadvantaged individuals are those socially disadvantaged individuals whose ability to compete in the free enterprise system has been impaired due to diminished capital and credit opportunities as compared to others in the same business area who are not socially and economically disadvantaged. Okay, so those are the definitions for that. This is important too. I've seen this question. I've seen this come up already. Entity reorganization for purposes of qualification for the priority period will result in automatic disqualification of the award. So you are what you are. You cannot at this point reorganize your organization to meet the priority period. Okay, very straightforward. Funding set-asides. Greg talked about some of this, I think, in the very beginning. We have $5 billion set aside for applicants with 2019 gross receipts of not more than 500,000. $400 billion is set aside for applicants with 2019 gross receipts of $501 to 1.5 million. And then an additional $500 million is set aside for applicants with 2019 gross receipts of not more than $50,000. And so, but SBA does reserve the right to reallocate these funds at the discretion of the administrator. So the administrator does have that ability. And this is my contact information, as well as our district director, Greg White. If you need me, feel free to call me. You can email me. Email really works a little better, but yeah, feel free. I'm in Charleston. I cover the coastal area of South Carolina. But I was, it's kind of funny. I was talking to one of our staff just right before this call, and she was dealing with a client in California. So we'll pretty much help anybody. It doesn't necessarily, I'm in Charleston. I talk to people in the upstate all the time. I talk to people from Georgia and North Carolina. Feel free to reach out if there's anything I can do. But I tell you, the helpline, really, if you have a question or an issue, they are going to be really your go-to source. But if there's anything I can do, I'll feel free to contact me. So I'm going to stop my share here, and I believe Angela Brewer is going to take over, and she will demonstrate and show us some of the functionality of the portal.
Okay, well, do you want to answer a couple of questions now? Or do you want to wait until after I show the how the actual application?
We got this. It's not quite 4. Sure, let's go ahead and we'll try to answer them.
What do I do if a restaurant is not open yet, but started the process before March, have lots of expenses but no revenue?
So you would follow. I'll tell you what, let me see if I can, I'm going to go back. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
So read the question one more time.
What do I do if my restaurant is not open yet, but that started the process before March? I guess I'm assuming it's March 2020, and have a lot of expenses but no revenue.
Yeah, so you're going to follow calculation 3. Okay, so you're going to have to provide 3 months of bank statements, 2020 and 21 gross receipts, provide all of that information as well as your expense documentation.
Thank you, William. And is there any backup documentation for self-certification required?
Read that one more time.
Is any backup documentation to self-certification required? From my They're asking about backup, if any, like on the, for women-owned small business? No, not that I know of.
Yeah, not that I know of. That is a self-certification process. SBA may come back at a later date and audit your application. And at that point in time, you very well may have to provide additional documentation.
And last question, what if my business is 100% owned by a white male, but is now owned 60% one female and 40% male, husband, wife, but previously owned by husband? We added wife to the ownership the first of this year, but we receive idle loan as 100% male owned.
Angela, you help me out on this one, but I think they would meet the eligibility requirement if they did it earlier in the year before March 11th.
I'm gonna go out on a limb because on the taxes, it show what percentage is owned by the company. So when they submit their taxes, they're looking at your tax, so it's gonna show what percentage, unless the structure for 2020. So if you claiming that you own the business before 2019, you just changed ownership in 2020. In 2021, that means the male owned the company in 2020. Are you with me? You following me?
Yeah, I'm with you.
She says they just changed the structure in 2021.
Yeah, that you may want to call the helpline, but I'm thinking if you changed your structure before this act went into place, that you would probably meet the priority group requirement. As long as the thing is, you cannot change it just to meet the rule for this program. So if you actually made that change prior to March 11th, you should be, I think you would be okay to file with the priority group.
But what I'm gonna say, I hope I'm coming loud and clear. Call and get clarification from the 1844 number, because I would hate for you to get disqualified.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you on that, Angela. In March 11th of 2021 is the date that this became public law. And so the way I would interpret it would be that if you had made that change before the law took effect, that your structure today would be what you would go by. Now, Angela's saying your taxes, what's reported in your taxes, and that's exactly right. SBA is going to be looking at that, and you would have to provide documentation showing when that change occurred, and that it did occur prior to the March 11th date.
And that was all the questions that we had in the chat.
Very good.
I'm trying to change the volume on my microphone because it appears to be low. Come on, microphone. Can everyone see my screen? Can you see my screen, William? The application?
Yes.
Okay.
And Angela, we hear you fine.
Okay, thank you. As William stated, starting Friday, you'll be able to do a login and password. Once you log in on Monday, and because you cannot access the system on Friday, you just be able to create the system. But the system will look like this. You'll start the application. And this, I think it told you, it shouldn't take no more than 20 minutes to complete the application. So you can start the application. It asks you a few disqualifying questions. Are you state and local government operated? Were you, did you have more than 20 locations as of March 13, 2020? Has a pending application been received for the shutter venue? Are you publicly traded? Can you be publicly traded? Is the applicant an owner or applicant suspended? You cannot have any actions toward from the federal government, so because you're not eligible for this program. Are you permanently closed? You have to answer all these questions before you go to the next step. The next step is not going to let you go any further. Here's where you designate what your status is. And here it'll pop up and let you know, if you check if you're socially and economic disadvantage. And then it asks you if you are franchised. SBA has a list on, it should be on the SBA website, a directory of all franchise. If you've already been designated as an SBA franchise. The list is out there, a directory is out there. So if you're not on that list, you are not considered an SBA franchise. And
Angela, just let me add to that. So if you're not, if you're a franchisee and you don't see your franchise on that list, you need to immediately get in touch with the franchisor and submit the required franchise disclosure agreement and franchise agreement to SBA to get a determination made on that.
Thank you. And as William stated in his presentation, you could have filed a Chapter 11 or 13 bankruptcy, but you need to have had a plan in place right now in order to be eligible for this program. And just outline what type of business that you have. You choose your business structure. I'm going to say a sole proprietor. You can choose whatever your structure is. And you can either use your EIN, your social, or your ITIN number. I'm going to give a fictitious, a made up number, so it's not going to be correct. You have to put in your 9 codes, 9 digits. Put in your business phone number. And here, if you don't put in an address that is actually in the Google or in the application, and it doesn't populate, it's not going to let you go any further. So you have to put in I don't know if a PO box will work. Never tried it. I guess it does. So if your PO box if you have an actual PO box, you can use a PO box. Everything populated. Anyone that has at least 20% ownership in your company, all should be listed here under business owners. And it asks you if you are affiliate or affiliated. And affiliation just means you have a percentage in another company. I know we get that. I've gotten that question just about every webinar that I've done. So if you affiliate, this means you have a percentage in a company, at least 20%.
There's a good explanation of that in the program guide as well on affiliation. So if you have any questions about your specific situation, I would encourage you to go back and review that guide.
And here, William gave you a list of things that you can use the funding for. Here, you just select what's your plan for using this funding. And as stated, if I had an actual EIN or put my social in there and it received the PPP, it would have automatically populated here.
And that's why it's so important to use the same format that you applied for in PPP.
So I'm going to go through each table. I'm going to do the first one. I will say I was in business as of December 22nd, 2018.
Angela, this is Greg.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna have to leave. Just wanted to interject. Wanted to thank everybody for attending and appreciate it. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact myself, or William, or our office, and we'll be glad to assist you in any way possible. But thank you again, and we're here to help small businesses, especially during this tough time. So thank you very much, and thank you, Michelle, William, and Angela for such a great presentation. And have a great day.
You too, Greg. Here, William talked about table 1. So once you put in the date that your business, you actually start selling products, you put that date in and it tells you which table you could use. You use table 1 as William went over. If you started business before January 1st, 2019, and you use table 4 if you have multiple locations. So we put in table 1. I would say in 2019, when things was going well, I made I say $100,000 in sales. In 2020, as you know, we shut down. Most restaurants shut down to probably June or July. I would say we made $55,000, and I only have 1 location. Only thing you need to do then is calculate. It would tell you how much you are eligible for, not how much you will receive. This is just because we have to verify that the documents that you put, that the amount you put in is correct. And, hopefully you don't put, you don't just put your 2018 because it's not accepting 17 and 18 because you don't have 19 and 20 taxes. This is based off of your 19 and 20 gross receipts. So this is just the calculations of how much you possibly could receive. So we're going to try for table 2. So say for instance, your business started in June of 2019, say June 12th. It say you can use table 2, 3, or 4. We're going to use table 2 so we can look at table 2 to see how it works. Again, how much did you earn in 2019? Since you were only open, did I say 2019? Yeah, 2019. We'll say $45,000 for those 6 months I was open in 2019. I would say $25,000 in 2020, and we were open for 6 months at 1 location. It tells me I'm eligible for $65,000. This is just how simple the calculation is. When William, because I know when I first seen it, when they first sent out the slides, my head was spinning. It's not that difficult once you actually get to the application online versus the paper application.
Yeah,
so we're gonna look.
Yes. So Angela, so in that situation, you had done it, it was $45,000 and they were in operation for 6 months.
Yes.
Yeah, and so what it did is it annualized that and turned it into 90,000, and then it just deducted the $65,000 expenses. That's how it arrived at that.
Thank you, William. Here for those, I know someone asked about expenses. She had a business that she was starting in March, but she didn't have any revenue, didn't make any sales. So here you will put in how much expenses you used on that time. Say for instance, you used $25,000 to get your business up and running. So from March of 2020 up until March 11, 2021, how much revenue what was your gross receipts? You can put in whatever your gross receipts are on your taxes. Let's say $65,000 at 1 location. It tells me I'm not eligible for anything because I recouped what I actually made, what I actually spent out. Any questions so far on the calculation? If not, I'm going to move on to the next page. Sarah, are there any questions in the chat?
No, I think you're good.
Oh, thank you. And here at SBA, we've been receiving a lot of phone calls over the past 2 months since they've started the Target EIDL loan. People accidentally put in the wrong number or they switched bank accounts. That's why they're asking for the last 3 months bank statement. With this new application, they're allowing you to connect your bank account with this. You can still do it the good old manual way. But if you put in the wrong number, it's going to hold up your funding if you get any funding allocated. But here you just go connect bank to the account. You choose whatever bank that you bank with and you log into the system. Once you log in, SBA will pull your account information over here and you go to the next page. So if you don't do online banking, you can do manual banking, but make sure you put in the correct numbers. You review your numbers before you go to the next page or submit. This is the page where you go upload your documents. I'm just about done. So you see, it does not take long at all. So that's why I encourage you, go ahead and download into a file or on your desktop all the documents that William went over that are required for you to submit this application. So here's where you go, you choose whatever form, whatever document that you're going to put in there, and you choose it from the file that you have it uploaded. Then you select next. Here you can choose a person. Most restaurants, you know, you probably help run the day-to-day operations, or you're out on the floor, waiting table, or whatever that you do. So you can choose someone that you trust to, if SBA has to return your form for whatever reason, that person can be contacted. So you can choose that person. And this is the last page. You have to DocuSign here, but because I have errors, it's not going to let me go any further. So you have to correct I will have to correct all these errors before it let me proceed to DocuSign. Once you DocuSign, that's just a testing that you get, that you promise everything that you put in here is accurate and correct to the best of your knowledge. So that's the application. It's a whole lot simpler than looking at the paper form that's online. Thank you, William.
Oh, thank you. That was great. Do we have any other questions?
I just see the one who asked the question about the restaurant and the ownership of the restaurant. I think that's the same person. She said, I had to switch my phone. Did he answer the new restaurant finding question that has no revenue?
Yeah, so we went through that, and Angela, you just covered that as well in the portal.
Yes.
All right,
Another question.
A business has a mobile food truck, it qualifies. They are expanding the name and menu to a brick and mortar. Will that make a difference? They should fill out two applications. Should they fill out two applications, one for the new brick and mortar and one for the mobile restaurant? So the mobile restaurant, it's still going to be one location because that mobile restaurant will be operating out of the brick and mortar. You could have 5 different food trucks, and you know, if you're showing the headquarters as your personal residence or another location, it's still going to be one location.
I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat, William.
Yeah, I don't either. I think we have it covered.
Either we're good or they went to sleep. What you think?
Well, thank you both. This was very educational, and hopefully it will help everybody that was listening to be better prepared for this. I think it's very important, as William said, that as soon as you can on Friday, go in and get registered, and then get the application submitted as soon as possible. But also, as he said, it's really important to understand that you need to make sure that your application is complete and correct when you finally submit it. From what I understand, you can go in multiple times and save and add to it, but
Yes.
Submit it. If there are any errors, as William said, you go to the back of the line. And so, you know, reach out to SBA, to the SBDC folks. Any of us are willing to try to help you make sure that you get everything correct and get it entered properly the first time.
Great advice.
So again, William and Angela, thank you so much. Just can't say enough about how much we appreciate your partnership and all that you guys are doing to help get this latest program out and for folks to understand it. Again, we will be posting this recording. It'll be on the SBDC website, which Sarah posted in the chat earlier. Thank you all for your time today, and we look forward to assisting you. Have a great evening.